morning, everyone!
As part of our biopsychology, today, we're going to focus on the senses of our body, specifically our sense of sight, or should we say our vision.
Our topic will cover the definition of eyes, parts of the eyes, our sense of sight, and how visual stimuli travels to the brain.
Sounds good and exciting.
So let's start!
A while ago, we've mentioned one of the parts of our body, and that is the eye. So based on the definition, the human eye is the organ which gives us the sense of sight, allowing us to learn more about the surrounding world than we do with any of the four other senses. We use our eyes in almost every activity we perform, whether reading, working, watching television, writing a letter, driving a car, and in countless other ways. Probably, most people would agree that sight is the most precious of the five senses, and many people fear blindness more than any other disability.
So we already know the definition of eyes. Here, I will briefly discuss various parts of the eyes. So the first part is the sclera. The sclera is the white of the eye. There was a saying that, don't shoot until you see their scleras. So its exterior is smooth, and as you can see, it is white. Sclera's interior is brown and grooved. Its interior part is said to be a long, narrow channel. It is durable. Its flexibility and strength is in the eyes. Scleras contains a continuous sheet of optic nerve, and there are tendons attached on it. Next to it is the cornea. The cornea is the clear bulging surface in front of the eye. It is the main refractive surface of the eye. So it is normally transparent and uniformly thick. It is nearly avascular. It is richly supplied with nerve fibers, though cornea is sensitive to foreign bodies, cold air, chemical irritation. Its nutrition is from aqueous humor, and as an additional information, tears maintain oxygen exchange and water content. Tears also prevent scattering and improve optical quality. Then, the anterior and posterior chambers. The anterior chamber is between the cornea and the iris, while the posterior chamber is between the iris and the lens. It contains the aqueous humor. Aqueous humor is generated from blood plasma. Glaucoma is a result of the increased fluid pressure in the eye due to the reduction or blockage of aqueous from the anterior to posterior chambers. And next to it is the iris or the pupil. Iris is heavily pigmented. There is a sphincter muscle to constrict or dilate the pupil. Pupil is the hole through which light passes. Pupil diameter ranges from about 3 to 7 millimeters. Eye color depends on the amount and distribution of the pigment melanin. So the other parts will be discussed by my partner.
As a continuation of the parts of the eye, the next part to be discussed is the lens of the eye. Lens is a transparent body enclosed in an elastic capsule made up of proteins and water. It consists of layers like an onion with firm nucleus, soft cortex. Young person can change shape of the lens via ciliary muscles. Contraction of muscle causes lens to bulge. Do you know that at roughly age of 50, the lens can no longer change shape? It becomes more yellow with age of 50, which is also known as cataracts. And then, the vitreous humor. It fills the space between lens and retina. It has a transparent, gelatinous body. It contains nutrition from retina vessels, ciliary body, aqueous. It also maintains eye shape. Then this one is one of the parts where I can say that we may all familiar besides the iris. It is the retina. The vertebrate retina is a light-sensitive layer of tissue lining the inner surface of the eye. The optics of the eye create an image of the visual world on the retina, which serves much the same function as the film in a camera. Light striking the retina initiates a cascade of chemical and electrical events that ultimately trigger nerve impulses. These are sent to various visual centers of the brain through the fibers of the optic nerve. As mentioned before from the additional learnings about retina, fovea is another part of the eye. The fovea is the location on the retina of center gaze. They are thinner, elongated, and very tightly packed. Because of this, the fovea is the location of highest visual acuity and best color vision. It is a small pit that contains the largest concentration of cone cells in the eye and is responsible for central vision. And then, the macula. The macula or macula lutea is an oval-shaped, highly pigmented yellow spot near the center of the retina of the human eye, and is often histologically defined as having 2 or more layers of ganglion cells. The macula also contains the parafovea and perifovea.
Now, we're going to move on. What do we mean to sense of sight? Sight or vision is the capability of the eyes to focus and detect images of visible light on photoreceptors in the retina of each eye that generates electrical nerve impulses for varying colors, hues, and brightness. So there are 2 different types of photoreceptors, the rods and cones. Rods are very sensitive to light but do not distinguish colors. Cones distinguish colors but are less sensitive to dim light.
Let's now talk about visual memory. So visual memory describes the relationship between perceptual processing and the storage and retrieval of the resulting neural representations. Visual memory occurs over a broad time range of scenes across eye movements in order to visually navigate to a previously visited location or to recognize an old friend.
The inability to see is called blindness. Blindness may result from damage to the eyeball, especially to the retina, damage to the optic nerve that connects each eye to the brain, or from stroke. Temporary or permanent blindness can be caused by poisons and medications.
People who are blind from degradation of damage to the visual cortex still have functional eyes, and they are actually capable of some level of vision and reaction to visual stimuli, but not a conscious perception. This is known as blind sight.
And of course, based on our sources, people with blind sight are usually not aware that they are reacting to visual sources and instead just unconsciously adapt their behavior to the stimulus.
We've been mentioned visual stimuli for several times. I know you guys want to know also how this visual stimuli travels to the brain. And this is how it goes. The human eye has many of the features of a camera, starting with the lens to focus light. The cornea of the eyes bends light rays and is primarily responsible for forming the image on the retina, the receptive surface inside the back of the eye. The visual image focused on the retina is inverted top to bottom and reversed right to left. The part of the world that you can see without moving your eyes or head is called your visual field. Each eye can see only a proportion of this visual field. This visual field can be divided into right and left visual hemifields. The right visual hemifield is seen by the temporal left retina and nasal right retina, while the left visual hemifield is seen by the nasal left retina and the temporal right retina. The visual field can also be divided vertically into superior and inferior divisions. Note that the visual fields of eyes overlap extensively in the central portion of each visual hemifield. This region defines the binocular field of view. Vision in the periphery of the field of view is strictly monocular, mediated by the most medial portion of the nasal retina. The center of the visual field projects its image onto the foveal region of the retina. On the retina, the highly specialized fovea has a dense concentration of small diameter cones and a 1:2:1 relationship between the cones and the bipolar and ganglion cells. Visual acuity is therefore especially high in this region. Now, let's examine the pathways from the retina into the brain. diagram shows a view of the base of the brain as seen from below. Note that is in the view, the position of the eye is reversed. The axons of retinal ganglion cells excrete the retina via the optic nerve. The optic nerve excites the eye in a region called the optic disc. Because there are no receptors in this region, nothing can be seen in the corresponding part of the visual field. This blind spot does not appear as a dark spot, rather, it is just simply a region from which we cannot obtain visual information. The vast majority of axons of the optic tract terminate in the lateral geniculate nucleus or LGN, which is the visual part of the thalamus. However, the axons of retinal ganglion cells also project to several other brain regions. Some axons of retinal ganglion cells extend to the supracolliculi, a paired structure on the roof of the midbrain. The superior colliculi help coordinate rapid movements of the eye towards the target. Small bundles of optic tract axons also project to the suprachiasmatic nucleus or SCN in the hypothalamus. Cells in the SCN are involved in the control of daily behavioral rhythms related to the dark and light cycle. Finally, optic tract axons from still other ganglion cells go to the midbrain nuclei that regulate the size of the pupil and help coordinate the movement of the eyes.
The lateral geniculate nucleus serves as the primary relay nucleus for visual processing by the cerebral cortex. The right LGN receives information from the left visual field, while the left LGN receives information from the right visual field. The spatial relationships among the ganglion cells in the retina are maintained in their targets as orderly representations or maps of visual space. The primate LGN has 6 layers, and input from the two eyes are maintained in separate layers within the LGN. Cells with input from the opposite eye are located in layers 1, 4, and 6. Cells with inputs from the same eyes are located in layers 2, 3, and 5. From the LGN, visual information is relayed to the visual cortex. Most of the axons from LGN neurons from the octave radiations, which terminate in the visual areas in the occipital cortex at the back of the brain. In addition to the primary visual cortex, numerous surrounding regions of the cortex are also largely visual in function. The topographic order of visual information is maintained in the visual cortex. The fovea is represented in the posterior part of the visual cortex, whereas more peripheral regions of the retina are represented in progressively more anterior regions. Note that the area of central vision, the fovea, is represented over an especially large part of the visual cortex. Inputs from the two eyes converge at the cortical level, making binocular effects possible. The primary visual cortex projects to other areas of cerebral cortex that are involved in the complex visual perception. The dorsal stream, which includes the middle temporal area, leads from the striate cortex in the parietal lobe. This system is thought to be responsible for spatial aspects of vision, such as the analysis of motion, positional relationship between objects in the visual scene. Another system, the ventral system, leads from the striate cortex in the inferior part of the temporal lobe. This system is thought to be responsible for high resolution of vision and object recognition.
So that's it. For our conclusion, our understanding of visual processing in the brain continues to improve with each passing year. While a great deal of basic processing occurs in the retina, we now know that the perception of forms and the recognition of objects are complex accomplishments that require processing in many parts of the visual system. Much of this processing occurs outside the primary visual cortex in the occipital, parietal, and temporal lobes, with specific regions specializing in processing different attributes or dimensions of visual experience. The development of non-invasive imaging techniques, such as positron emission tomography or PET, and functional magnetic resonance imaging or fMRI are also contributing a great deal to our understanding of visual processing in the human brain.
This is how we will end our topic. Kindly close your eyes and imagine you have not seen ever since the world and yourself. You will not have an idea with what it looks like when you only feel it. Eyes are very important for the human body. It helps the human body to do its task with coordination.
Because without it, a man won't be able to see the beauty of this wonderful world. Eyes are the windows of the soul. Without eyes, the 5 basic senses would not be complete. So it should be preserved.